We're in Book 3, Chapter 81, continuing with verse 78. There is nothing that is not composed of the elements of earth, water, and the like. And therefore, there is nothing in nature that is apart from the nature of atomic consciousness. The thinking soul penetrates into all things in the form of their notions, because all thoughts concentrate in the intellect. There's nothing apart from it. Our desires being the parents of our wished for objects. Our desires are the same as our desired. Therefore, there's no difference between our desires and the object of our desire. It's like there is none between the sea and its waves. So this gives us another perspective on how individual karmic traces on an individual level cause our desires. So there's really no difference between individual karmic traces and what we desire and the object of our desire. The object of the desire is just a more expressed manifestation of the same energy that is the karmic trace that creates the desire. Now, on the level of the universe, the divine karmic traces, they are also the source of all activity in the universe. It's moving along with divine karmic traces that we call synchronicity. So in both cases, individual and universal, there's no difference between the karmic trace and the desire and the object or the thing that the karmic trace is attempting to manifest. Verse 81, the Supreme Soul exists alone, unbounded by time or space. So this is the silent witness. Being the universal soul, it is the soul of all. Being omniscient, it is no dull matter at all. The self-existent, being only consciousness, is not perceptible to sight. There is unity and no duality in it. But all forms unite into one in the great self of the Supreme. If there is a duality, it is the one and its unity. The unity and duality of the universal soul are both as true as the light and its shade joined together. Where there is no duality or any number above it, unity can have no application to anything. And where there is no unity, there cannot be any two or more over it, because they are only repetitions of the unity. Anything in itself, such as it is, it cannot be more or less than itself, but is identical with itself, like water and its fluidity. multiplicity of forms which it exhibits blends into a harmonic whole without conflict with one another. The varieties within creation are contained in Brahman, like a tree with all its several parts in the embryonic seed. Its dualism is as inseparable from it as the bracelet from its gold. Although the many forms in nature are evident to comprehensive understanding, yet it is not true of the true entity. Like fluidity of water, the movement of air, and the emptiness of air of the sky, this variety of forms is an inseparable property of God. A systematic inquiry into unity and duality is the cause of misery to the restless spirit. It is the lack of any such distinction that is the highest knowledge. The measurement, and measurer of all things. The viewer, view, and vision of the visible world are all dependent on the atom of consciousness that contains them all. The atom of divine consciousness spreads out and contracts itself by an inflation of its spirit, as if it were by a breath of air. These mountainous orbs of the world are like its limbs. Oh, the wonder and great wonder of wonders, that this atom of consciousness should contain in its embryo all the three regions of the worlds above and below one another. It is an incredible delusion that must always remain an inexplicable riddle. How the enormous universe is contained in the minute atom of consciousness. As a pod contains the seed with a huge tree within its cell, so the divine soul contains the atom of consciousness, containing the chains of worlds outstretched within itself. The all-seeing eye simultaneously sees all the worlds situated within the bosom of the intellect, as microscopic sight discovers the parts of the future tree concealed in the seed. The expansion of the world in the atom of consciousness is analogous to the enlargement of the hidden parts of the seed into leaves, flowers, branches, and fruit. As the many forms of the future tree is contained in the uniform substance within the seed, it is in like manner that the multiplicity of worlds is situated in the unity of the divine, of the atomic consciousness. Such is seen by anyone who will but look into it. It is neither a unity nor a duality, neither a seed or its sprout. It is not thick or thin, born or unborn. He is neither an entity nor a non-entity. nor graceful nor ungraceful. And although it contains the three worlds with the ether and air, yet it is nothing, and it has no substance at all. So what are we describing here? This is, in essence, what a dream is. If you think about it, it contains all these marvelous things in our dream. Maybe dream creatures are there. But in reality, there's nothing there. It's an energy of consciousness being projected on the screen of the mind. Very much like watching a video or a movie. There is no world and no non-world other than consciousness, which is all of itself and is said to be such and such in any place or time as it appears so and so to us there and then. It rises as if unrisen, expands in its own knowledge. It is self-same with the Supreme Soul. And as the totality of all selves, it spreads through the entire emptiness like air. Like a tree springs from the ground according to its seed, so the world appears to sight in the form as contained in the seed of consciousness. The plant does not quickly quit its seed, lest it would dry up and die for want of its sap. So the man who sticks to the soul and seed of his being is freed from disease and death. All that we see going on in the world around us is caused by karmic traces. Karmic traces that are individual, generated, that operate in opposition to the divine karmic traces, and divine karmic traces that form the basic substratum of the dream, provide the scenery, provide the mountains and the rivers and the forests and the meadows, provide the basic structure of the beings. But it is the karma of each of the beings that creates what they ultimately appear like in the stream of the universe. Those of us here have enough karma that aligns with divine karmic traces, that we have a human physical body. Many other beings do not have enough divine karmic traces exposed to create a human body. So they exist as some animal form. Mount Meru is like the filament of a flower compared to the vastness of that atom. Everything that can be sensed has its place in that invisible atom. As we mentioned earlier, Mount Meru is the universal Sri Chakra, universal energy pattern beyond the knowledge construct that we appreciate to be the basis of the universe. Meru is truly a filament of the atomic flower of the divine soul. And myriads of Merus resemble the cloudy spots rising in the sphere of consciousness. As we said, there is a Sri Chakra for every manifest form. It is that one great atom that fills the world. After having made it out of itself and given it a visible, extended, and material form in its own hollow sphere. As long as the knowledge of duality is not driven out of the mind, it finds the charming form of the world, as in its dream upon waking. But the knowledge of unity liberates the soul from its stay and in and return to the world, which it beholds as a mass of divine essence. Chapter 82. Friendship with the Rakshasi, criminals, as Vashishta continued. The silly Karkati of the forest, having heard the king's speech, pondered well the sense of the words and forsook her levity and malice. She found the coolness and tranquility of her heart. After its fervor was over, just like a peacock when the rains set in, or a lotus bed at the rising of moonbeams. The king's words delighted her heart like the cries of cranes. Flying in the sky gladdened the passing clouds in the air. Rakshasi said, "Oh, how brilliantly shines the pure light of your understanding. It glows as serenely by its inner brilliance as it is illuminated by the sun of intelligence. Hearing the elements of your reasoning, my heart is as gladdened as when the earth is cooled by the serene beams of humid moonlight. Reasonable men like you are honored and venerated in the world. And I am as delighted in your company as the lake of lotuses with full-blown buds under moonbeam. The company of the virtuous scatters its blessings, just like a flower garden spreads its fragrance all around. And like the brightness of sunbeams, brings the lotus buds to bloom. Company of the good and great dispels all our sorrows, just like a lamp in the hand dispenses surrounding darkness. I have been fortunate to have found you as two great lights in this forest. Both of you are entitled to my reverence. Please let me know what good intent has brought you here. The king answered, O offspring of the savage race of Rakshasas, the people of this province are always afflicted in their hearts by a certain evil. It is the stubborn disease of choleric pain that troubles the peoples of this part. Therefore, I have come out with my guards to find her out in my nightly round. No medicine removes this choleric pain from the hearts of men. So I have come in search of the mantra revealed to her for its cure. It is my business and professed duty to persecute such wicked beings as yourself who infest our ignorant subjects in this way. This is all I have to tell you and do in this place. Therefore, good lady, promise in your own words that in future you will never injure any living being. Rakshasa replied, well, I tell you truly, my lord, that I shall henceforth never kill anybody. The king replied, if that be so, you who lives on animal flesh, tell me, how can you support your body if you abstain from animal food? The Rakshasa replied, it has been 6 months, O king, since I have risen from my samadhi meditation and fostered my desire for food, which I wholly renounce today. I will return to the mountaintop, resume my steadfast meditation, and sit there contented as long as I like, in the posture of an unmoving statue. I shall restrain myself by unshaken meditation until my death, and then I shall quit this body and its time with gladness. This is my resolution. I tell you now, O king, that until the end of this life and body of mine, I shall no more take the life of any living being, and you may rely assured on my word. There is Mount Himalaya by name, standing in the heart of the northern region, and stretching in one sweep from the vast east to west. At first, I lived there in a cave by its golden peak. I was in the shape of an iron statue, and also like a cloud fragment. And I bore the name of Karkati the Rakshasi. There, by austerity of my meditation, I obtained the sight of Brahma and expressed my desire to kill mankind in the shape of a destructive needle. I obtained the boon accordingly and passed a great many years in the act of afflicting living beings and feeding on their entrails in the form of choleric pain. Then Brahma prohibited me from killing the learned, and he instructed me in the great mantra. He gave me the power of piercing the heart of men with some other diseases that infect all mankind. I spread myself far and wide in my malice and sucked the heart blood of men, which dried up their veins and arteries and emaciated their body. those I left alive after devouring their flesh and blood, beget a race as lean and without veins that they had become themselves. You will be successful, O happy king, in getting the mantra for driving away cholera pain, because there is nothing impossible that the wise and strong cannot obtain. Receive immediately, O king, the mantra that Brahma uttered to remove choleric pain from the cells of arteries weakened by cholera. Come and let us go to the nearby river. After you are both prepared by washing and purification, then I will initiate you with the mantra. Vashishta said, then the Rakshasi proceeded to the riverside that very night, accompanied by the king and his minister, all joined together as friends. These two men, being sure of the Rakshasi's friendship by both affirmative and negative proofs, made their ablutions and stood on the river bank. Then the Rakshasi tenderly told them the mantra that Brahma had revealed to her to remove cholera pain, and which was always successful. Afterwards, as the nocturnal fiend was about to depart and leave her friendly companions behind, the king stopped her with his speech. The king said, "O you of gigantic stature, by teaching us the mantra, you've become our teacher. We affectionately invite you to take our meal with us tonight. It does not become you to break off our friendship, which has grown at our very first meeting, like the acquaintance of good people. Give your ill-favored form a little more graceful figure and walk with us to our home and stay there with our own great pleasure." The Rakshasi replied, "You can well provide a female of your own kind with her proper food, but what entertainment can you give to my satisfaction? I am a cannibal by nature. It is only a Rakshasi's food that can satisfy me, not the little morsels of petty mortals. This is the innate nature of our being, and it cannot be done away with as long as we carry our present bodies." The king answered, "Ornamented with necklaces of gold, you shall be at liberty to remain with the ladies in my house for as many days as you may like to stay. Then for your food I will produce the robbers and felons that I seize in my territory. You will have them supplied to you constantly by the hundreds and thousands. You can then partake your attractive form, resume your hideous Rakshasi figure, and kill hundreds of those lawless men for your food. Take them to the top of the snowy mountain and devour them at your pleasure. Great men always like to take their meals in privacy. After your recreation with that food and a short nap, you can resume your meditation. When you are tired with your meditation, you come back to this place. You can then take other offenders for your slaughter. Killing culprits is not only justifiable by law, it amounts to an act of mercy to rid them of their punishment in the next world. You must return to me when you are tired of your meditation, because friendship, even that formed with the wicked, is not easily done away. The Rakshasi replied, "You have spoken well, King, and I will do as you say. For who is there that will slight the words of the wise spoken to him in the way of friendship?" Vashishta said. Saying so, the Rakshasi assumed a graceful form and wore necklaces and bracelets and silken robes and laces. She said, "Well, King, let us go together," and then followed the footsteps of the king and his counselor, who walked before her and led the way. Having arrived at the royal residence, they passed the night with their agreeable meal and discourse together. As it became morning, the Rakshasi went inside the house and remained there with the women. Meanwhile, the king and the minister attended to their business. Over the course of 6 days, the king collected together all the offenders he had seized in his territory and from other parts. These amounted to 3,000 heads, which he gave to her. She resumed her fierce dark form of the black fiend of the night. She laid hold of thousands of men in her extended grasp. Like a cloud fragment holds drops of rainwater in its wise bosom. She took leave of the king and went with her prey to the mountaintop, just like a poor man takes gold that he happens to find in some hidden place. For 3 nights and days, she refreshed herself with her food and rested. Then, regaining the firmness of her understanding, she employed herself in meditation. After 4 or 5 or sometimes 7 years passed, she used to get up from her top and return to where men live in the court of the king. And there she passed some time in confidential conversation. Then she returned with her prey to the offenders, to her mountain seat. Thus freed from cares even in her lifetime, she continued to remain as a liberated being in that mountain. And so in chapter 82, now we have caught up in this section. We jumped ahead. And so now we are back to where we left off before, which was book 3, chapter 84, verse 32. We'll continue with 84:32. Having known this, O Rama, you will be able to cast away all your false conceptions, being certain of certainty. You will resign your attachments and desires in this enchanted and bewitching world. All these perspective worlds are machinations and the workings of the mind. Having forsaken these false fabrications of fantasy, you will have tranquility of your soul and abide in peace with yourself forever. By paying your attention to the drift of my teaching, you from your own reasoning will be able to find a might of the medicine that cures all the illnesses of your deluded mind. If you sit in silent meditation, you will see the whole world in your mind. All outward bodies will disappear like drops of oil in sand. The mind is the seat of the universe. As long as it is not weakened by passions and affections and afflictions of life. When the mind is rid of the turmoil of its present state, it is set beyond the world in heavenly bliss. Now, what this means, of course, is that when individual karmic traces have been balanced, then the experience of the divine karmic traces can be had, and that equates with heavenly bliss. The mind is the means to accomplish anything. With our mind, we have one ability to think a thought. It is the only tool that we have for climbing out of the well of samsara. Because the well of samsara is made of individual karmic choices. So using the tool of the mind, we can build a ladder of balanced karmic traces that will take us out of the depth of ignorance. In 37, the mind is the means to accomplish anything. It is the storekeeper to preserve all things in the warehouse of its memory. It is the faculty of reasoning and the power to act like a respectable person. Therefore, the mind is to be treated with respect, as it recalls, restrains, and guides us in our pursuits and duties. The mind contains within it the three worlds, with all their contents and the surrounding air. It exhibits itself as the fullness of the ego. Which is the seed of all its powers. The other part, its objective part, bears in itself the false forms of the dull material world. And so let's take a look at this description of the mind. The intellectual part of the mind contains the subjective self-consciousness of the ego. The other part, the objective part, are the karmic traces. The self-born Brahma saw the yet uncreated and formless world as already present before his mind in its ideal state, like a dream at its first creation. He saw it mentally without seeing it actually. He saw the whole creation in the self-consciousness of his vast mind. And he saw all material objects, the hills and all, in the knowledge, sambit, of his gross personal consciousness. At last, by his subtle sightings, sukshumam, subtle knowledge or clairvoyance, he perceived that all gross bodies were as empty as air and not solid substances. The mind with its embodying thoughts is pervaded by the omnipresent soul, and that is spread out as transparently as sunbeams upon clear water.